It's kind of a happy coincidence that this parable of the prodigal son shows up this weekend when so many of our small faith groups are starting to read John Paul II's encyclical, Rich in Mercy. Coincidence because this is the parable that John Paul II uses in his encyclical. And he uses it to try to elucidate a little more about God's mercy. We call this parable the parable of the prodigal son, and most of the time people focus on the son. But John Paul II uses it to look at the father, and he discovers some interesting and deeper insights, not only into God's mercy, but into the motive for God's mercy, which actually I think is the more important part, really. I want to start with just a very short phrase from the encyclical. John Paul II writes, "The father of the prodigal son is faithful to his fatherhood." And that's where I think that's the point where he really sinks down into these insights. So how is he faithful to his fatherhood? First of all, just that he welcomes the son home. He forgives the great insult of the son. And you may or may not pick up on that as we read the parable. But basically the son was saying, I want you dead. Just give me what would come to me if you die, and I want you gone. I'm not interested in you being my father or me being your son. I just want to take the property and go about my life, Now, to the son's credit, when he decides to come back, he realizes that he has forfeited the right to be called son, and he says, just call me servant. But the father is faithful to his fatherhood. Nothing the son can do can make the father not want to be father. That's the first way. The second way that the father is faithful to his fatherhood comes about in something else, and I'll just read this from John Paul II's encyclical. This fidelity is expressed in the parable not only by his immediate readiness to welcome him home when he returns after having squandered his inheritance, it is expressed even more fully by that joy, that merrymaking for the squanderer after his return. Merrymaking which is so generous that it provokes the opposition and hatred of the elder brother. And this is the part that I think is more important evidence of God's mercy, or it shows a certain part of his mercy that we don't think about. It's the motive for his mercy. And so John Paul II writes that he shows his faithfulness to his fatherhood by the joy with which he receives the son. And what is that joy? Just for the heck of it, I asked two sets of parents yesterday what they thought that joy would be. And they both more or less said, duh, he's got his son back. Any parent would know that, And John Paul II admits there is this level where the joy is caused in part because of the affection the father has for his son. But that's not really the answer. It's deeper than that. John Paul II writes this: nevertheless, the causes of this emotion, this joy, are to be sought at a deeper level. The father's joy is not because he has his son back. That would be about the father, right? The father's joy is not about the father. It's about the son. And he explains it this way to his servants: then let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. The Father's joy is not about regaining his Son. The Father's joy is about his Son regaining his dignity. He was lost. He was lowered beneath the level of pigs. He was, in effect, dead. Not to the Father now. The Father never said, "You're dead to me." The Son was dead to himself. The Son had lost himself. And this is where the Greek in Luke is really nice. Luke, it's translated this way anyway. I mean, Luke uses the Greek, but this is translated coming to his senses. The Son decides to go back to the Father. But the Greek literally means having come to himself. He's lost himself, he's lost his way, but he comes to himself. And he realizes that even if he can't claim the dignity of a son, certainly he has more dignity than a beast, right? Than a pig. And this is the bigger point, really, of sin and going our own way. Yes, sin is an offense against God and against others sometimes, etc. But the really bigger part of sin and going our own way is that it lowers us. You know, we sometimes say to people, "You're better than that," you know, when they've not acted in a way that they could have, you know. And that's literally true. We're better than sin. And we see this in the first reading. God says to Moses, "Your people have become depraved." When we separate ourselves from God, whether it's formal sin or just kind of wandering away, you know, we risk eventually squandering our dignity as sons and daughters of God. And the good news, of course, is that anytime we come to ourselves, we can regain that dignity. I mean, this is what happens in the sacrament of reconciliation. We say to God, in effect, "I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your daughter or your son." But the Father, who is always faithful to his fatherhood, welcomes us back, and the feasting in heaven begins. There's more joy in heaven over one repentant sinner. Why is there such joy? Because God has us back again? Partly. But the deeper level is because God sees that our dignity as human beings and as sons and daughters has been restored. I'd like to reach even deeper with this insight. This is really kind of lovely. We can see why the Father, as Father, is so joyful at the restoration of our dignity. But why is there more joy in heaven over one repentant sinner? Why will there be, as we just heard, rejoicing among the angels of God over one sinner who repents? And the answer is in the parable, I think. Remember that the Father explains to his servants why they should celebrate. Because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. But the servants don't get it. Remember, the elder son comes and says, "What's this sound of music and dancing I hear?" And the servant explains it this way: "Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." That's just that superficial level, that surface level, right? That's the level of human affection. They don't understand. But that's not what the Father told them. And in this context, actually, of human affection, it's understandable that the elder son would be angry. Just on that level, because he says, "I've never transgressed on that level. I've never squandered anything of you. I've never told you I wanted you dead. You know, I've always obeyed and respected you." And so the Father tries to draw, it seems to me, the Son, the second son, into the same joy that he feels as Father. Listen to what he says. "My son, you are here with me always. But now we must celebrate and rejoice because, and notice, I love this, he doesn't say, because my son was dead and has come to life again, my son was lost and is now found. He says, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. Your brother was lost and now he's been found. And we commonly use those terms, brothers and sisters, referring to fellow parishioners or other Christians, But so often what I see is we still are on the level of human. Like somehow that we say brother and sister the way we mean it, in our families. But this parable shows us a deeper level, I think, of what it means to be connected as Christians. There is joy in heaven over a repentant sinner, not because one of the father's daughters has returned or one of the father's sons has come to life again, because their own brother has come to life again. Their own sister was lost and is now found. They're joyful because their own brothers and sisters have regained their human dignity. And this is what it means, truly, to be a Christian brother or a sister, is to care about not just their human material needs or emotional needs or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with that. But truly to be a Christian brother or sister means to go deeper than that, to care about their human dignity, to care about their souls, to care about their eternal life. This is why we care about another person's sin, not because it affects us or bothers us or offends us or even if it hurts us, but because when the other sins, she or he starts down the road of eventual depravity. They lose their dignity. And this is what it means to love another. This is what it means to be merciful, not just to forgive, but to rejoice that our sister is coming to life again, to rejoice that our lost brother is being found.